This is the 4th of May 2016, and I thought I'd do a piece about the human brain and the way that it is similar to computers. There's people who have spoken for quite a while about how the human brain has a 80% of it we don't use, apparently. This is kind of the arrogance of the people who give the opinion. Someone once said that the medical profession was where engineering was in the 1800s. You know, they've got clever stuff like MRI scanners and stuff, and keyhole surgery, and you know, they see what they're doing up on the big screen. I mean, I always said that until they could physically see something up close, and I mean at a more than a microscopic level, I'm really talking nano level, then they would not be able to properly understand chemistry and so on. And they've done that. We've gone beyond the electron microscope now, and we're into other stuff, other imaging techniques. But the 80% thing of the brain not being used, that is just the result of arrogance on the part of the various people saying this. You know, you get that movie, Limitless, where the guy takes a pill and it supposedly allows him to access the other 80% of his brain. It's just sat there, you know, vegetating without being used. Nature doesn't do that. Nature or God or whatever you believe in simply doesn't create stuff that is hanging around, you know, just in case, you know. Most of the big advances in medicine have been very little to do with doctors and scientists. They talk about stem cells and stem cell research. The bottom line is, you put a load of stem cells from a baby's umbilical cord, a mother and baby, the umbilical cord. You take a load of stem cells from that and you stick it in the area where somebody's nervous system, like the spine, has been damaged somehow, and it will repair it. Without being ungrateful to the scientists who have got into that, what has that got to do with them? They got something and did it. That's not an invention, that's a discovery. And people often confuse the two things because it suits them, I guess. So you get people, scientists talking, BMS, biomedical scientists, talking as though they've produced it, as though, you know, they're so wonderful. God or nature or fate or whatever you want to call it produced stem cells, and they repair nerve tissue and so on. So what makes you think that you're so great because you found it? It took us millennia to do so. That doesn't sound like fast progress. You put this paste on a problem part and it fixes it. That's a discovery, not an invention. The same with DNA. The DNA editing, yeah, it's cool, but you need to have the stuff to edit. So whoever invented DNA, that's the clever person, and that's God or fate or nature or whatever you choose to believe in. So 80% of the brain isn't used. Well, you know, we're learning now. We've got something called animal mimicry, where people copy ideas from nature and they use it in engineering or in biomedical science or in surgery or something. That's us discovering something and using it. That's not inventing something as such. You're inventing a procedure perhaps, but you didn't invent the thing. So the business of 80% of the brain not being used, what I really wanted to say, and I'll eventually get to the point, is that computers do seem, the more you think about it, the more it seems that computers are very like the human brain. So, got an iPad here, right? I'm going to use this as a convenient version of a computer. I could have brought my tower computer in here, but if you've ever seen Judge Dredd, the movie, he goes around a massive motorcycle looking thing, and the thing he drives up to, and that has a load of people in it, that's the size of my computer in the bedroom. It's big, so I'm not going to bring it in. You know, the sort of thing he patrols is the sort of thing I've got for a major PC. But that device is full of stuff. It's got a vision system. It's got a display system. It's got the actual computing power in it. It's got a battery. Okay. All the stuff that a brain needs. And we've kind of, I'm not saying we copied the idea of a human brain and made it a computer, but we slowly got to the point where we've got a thinking machine, and it's our version of a brain. So, to put it in brief, this is just my idea based on what I know. The 80% of the brain or whatever number it is that people say is not used, that is the hardware. Okay? That's the circuit board and the chips, if you want to think of it that way, of our brain. The 20% that people think we're using, that is the software. Pardon my iPad. That's the software. So in other words, the bit that we think and see and talk a lot about and scientists investigate, that often is the bit on top. That's the software superstructure on the hardware part of the brain. And the hardware part of the brain is 80%. My tower machine, there's only one little bit on the top, pardon me, that is the screen. And then there's the keyboard, and there's the software on the hard disk. But that's a small part of the actual computer. And yet there's a huge tower there with different circuit boards in it. The circuit boards and the body of it, that's the bulk of it. But the bit I see and deal with is the software, which is just it occupies a little bit of a few chips on it and a thin film on the rotating platters, glass platters of the hard disk. That's the software part of it. And that's the part that I'm saying is analogous to the thinking part that we are conscious of the human brain. So the bit you're conscious of, the thinking part, is the software in the human brain. And the other bit, the 80% that supposedly is untapped because it's just not used and nature just came up with it for the heck of it, you know, very funny. Nature doesn't do anything for even just one reason. So if the bulk of the brain is there as needed, and I say it's the hardware. Now, how does the hardware take up so much room? Well, it's in computers. It comes down to a little bunch of switches, and lots of them. I don't know if it's millions, but it's a hell of a lot. And these switches do this. They just do that. And we call it a flip-flop. In transistor terms, which is what you have in switches that you have in a computer, they are flip-flops, and there are millions of them. So when the Americans say flip the light, we would say switch on the light in the United Kingdom and Britain. But when Americans say flip the light, they mean switch the light on. So I suppose the Americans, when they want you to turn the light off, should really say flop the light. Because flip, flop, and that is what millions of little connections are doing in a computer. Millions of little switches. They're being made, that's a connection made, and then they're being broken, made and broken, made and broken. So the switch is flipping and then it's flopping. Yeah? So all this takes up the bulk of the room in the brain. And that's the bit that we don't see and we're not conscious of. We're very conscious of the thinking bit every day. So we have a lot in common in terms of our brain with a computer. And what's interesting was I'd always said that the brain is no good without the body. The human brain would not have evolved properly, and we wouldn't have got to the level we're at without the body that goes with it. And that's the thing that people forget. You think, why have robots not come on? And they talk about robot bits of software and stuff. And you see physical robots and they're clunky things and they're you have to tell them what to do. The clever thing about it is when that robot is able to do stuff for itself. What's the big thing that separates us as humans from most of the animals? And it is this, somebody pointed this out to me, a guy that's got a doctorate in biology or something. It's this. That's it. That's your test. If you've got a creature that can do this, hey, I'm intelligent. If you've got a creature that can do that, then you've got a creature that physically is what it needs in order to get around in the world and do stuff. Dolphins are really smart, but how much are you going to create with a pair of flippers? You know, literally, you have a physical restraint to helping to develop your brain. If you can put yourself in a sophisticated environment, look, they talk when you're sportsmen or sportswomen, they talk about playing a better opponent. You play yourself better. If you play chess, you play yourself better by playing a harder opponent. You play a load of easy opponents. It's not that hard. You know, if you've got an easy opponent, you don't have to work that hard and you never have to get any better. So that's how you see chess masters, and they're playing like 5 games at a time or something with lesser people. Because they're so much higher level, and even that's not that good because they're not at high level. They just have 5 low level games going on. So, in order to be able to more difficultly interact in a more sophisticated or harder manner with your environment, you need the hands and stuff and be able to move around to do it. And that's what we have as human beings. It's the combination of the brain and the dexterity that makes us the leaders in the world. That's what does it. The other animals are handicapped. They are literally, whether it's God or nature. I mean, I personally believe there is a creator or creators, because I think to believe that we came out of the swamp and then grew into what we are is an extraordinary claim. And, you know, apparently we all take credit. Doctors take credit for doing stuff, and scientists take credit for managing stuff, and businessmen take credit for managing stuff. But apparently there's no other such thing that can manage stuff. Apparently we're it. Well, I say we are it in our world, but the creator, God, nature, if you want to believe that, fate, saw fit to handicap the rest of the animals so that they were not going to be the threat to us that they would otherwise be. I mean, can you imagine a big cat that could also do all the stuff that we can do? Well, it would create all the machines we can create. It could build a machine gun and we'd be dead. If it was intelligent as us and it had the dexterity and stuff, we would never be able to survive that species. So the basic point I'm getting across is this. Don't believe that just because doctors tell you it. We have a terrible thing in this world of believing people who are rich. Just because they're rich and important in society doesn't mean that their opinion's actually worth anything. You know, many people who are rich are a lot less smart than people who have no money. They don't believe that because somebody rich tells you, or somebody who society says is important, i.e. they're on the news or whatever, just because of that, don't think that that means their opinion is actually worth any more than yours, because it doesn't. So just because they all say that 80% of the brain is not used, doesn't mean to say we have to believe it. I don't believe it. That's the hardware. And the 20% that works, that we understand, is the software. And so when people say they're going to sleep on it when they have a problem they can't quite solve, this is the classic thing. If you can't solve a problem, procrastinate. Go do something else. Go to sleep. Go work on your car. Go do some gardening. Go walk. When you wake up in the morning, 8 times out of 10 you've got an answer to whatever the problem was that it was unsolvable. And the next day you've got a solution for it. And that's because you left it alone and you think, well, how can that happen? Well, I put it to you that the bit we're conscious of, where we have to drive the thinking, that's the software. That bit is not the bit that's solving the problem. We tried using that bit when we were conscious and it didn't work. We go to sleep on it, we wake up, we go, oh God, that's it. And that's your unconscious. And I am saying your unconscious is some low-level bit of code, if you want to call it that, in your head that runs the hardware. And while your brain is the conscious bit, the little tiny conscious bit is tired and has not been able to solve the problem, Your conscious bit has put together all the components that you are aware of, that your brain will then think about in its own way, in its own low-level hardware way, will consider and ponder, and will fit those bits together into something that resembles a solution. And maybe the answer you wake up with in the morning is, you know what I need? I need to know a bit more. I can't get an answer because I don't know enough. I'll go and know a bit more. I'll research. I'll learn something else. And then, you know what? The main thing about intelligent people is that they persevere. That's really what it's about. If you can bash your brains and keep bashing them, and you don't give in, and you keep thinking about a problem, you will generally solve it. If you can't remember something and you're in an exam and you've got 20 minutes and you think, it's a pity I couldn't remember that answer, do not just sit there and go, oh, it's nice paintwork. Look at the answer, look at the question, and think round the problem, and think about other things to do with that subject. And I almost guarantee you that if you've got 15 or 20 minutes left, you might, maybe 2 minutes left, you might well come up with the answer. Don't give in. Just don't give in. If you're trying to remember something, just keep trying. And the chances are awfully good you will come up with it. Might take 15 minutes. Might take thinking about it, going, oh, that thing where you've got it, it's on the tip of your tongue, it's on the edge of your mind, you've almost got it but you can't quite. Just keep returning to it. Eventually it will come to you. And that's really the basic point I want to get across in this video piece, that the human brain is like a machine. Oh, that was the other point. The internet is the thing that's most like a human brain, because it's able to have those experiences, those physical experiences. The internet as a brain lives vicariously, as they say, which means it lives through other people. So although the internet can't physically itself interact with the world, and it can't pick up a camera and move it around and stuff, although the internet cannot do that, it can do that through the human beings who interact with it and put that sort of information into the internet. So I guess what I'm really saying is, we're waiting for some way of connecting the physical images like you're seeing now and the action images with the internet brain, in order that it can become kind of more aware of the world it exists in. And that would be the point where you could start being frightened, I think. There's nothing to be frightened of at the moment. But when we get to the point where we allow it to live vicariously really, really well, instead of just now not very well, then it won't not need humans, but it will need humans to do stuff. So I wouldn't worry about it overly, but bear in mind that we need to always have focus on doing good things and right things in life, being fair, rather than just trying to make money and drop everyone in the cack so that we can be better off next week. And that is how mankind so far has got people rich. Oil billionaires. I mean, you got some of these places where they're getting the oil, and villages have been destroyed in order that they can have their oil field there, or they poison the area with what they're doing. So villages, people just leave. So that's my basic point. It's 80% of the brain not used. No, it is. That's the unconscious bit that does the flip-flopping for us en masse. And those things that you call synapses, that's the flip-flop. That's the transistor of the human brain. And that's a synapse. And they spark, as they call it. And there's all sorts of other things they have in common with computers. But that's the basic thing. The bit that we think about as thinking is the software, and it's only a tiny part of it. The 80% of it is needed, the hardware is needed, and our body is needed in order to facilitate the brain to improve and to do things it needs to do, like create computers, so we can, the things that are too hard for our brains to think about, or having to do 1,000,000 times or something, we can get a machine to do. Okay, thanks for watching and listening.